Happy New Year, guys, and welcome to my third live. By the way, Grace, this is my third live ever since I started this channel, and it's been a while. So I definitely need to improve. So, welcome to our third live. And today I have a guest. She is an amazing dietitian. She's called Grace. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. And then, after the introduction, then we're going to talk about briefly about what you're going to talk about, and then we can start. Grace, karibu sana.
Asante sana, Lilian. Hi, good people. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. My name is Grace Njuguna. I am an RDN dietitian, if you like. I specialize in taking care of chronic kidney diseases, and they amount from what we are going to be discussing today, non-communicable diseases, but a good chunk coming from those. And I hope you'll be able to benefit from the conversation that we'll be having today to guide you into the new year, your vision board, your resolutions. And of course, health is one of those goals that we want to keep. Um, and to note that the biggest form of wealth we have is great health. So I hope today the conversation will actually help each and every one of you to make good decisions, informed decisions. Lilian.
Thank you, Grace, for that warm introduction. And yeah, as Grace has said, health is definitely one of our priorities this coming year. And if it's not, you should go back to your vision board and recraft it and make sure that you introduce it, because we say if you're not healthy, you cannot accumulate wealth, you cannot do anything. Because majority of Kenyans are actually one disease away from poverty. Even the middle class, kuna shida. So basically, the reason that we are having this discussion is because over the last year, or the last few years, we have been talking about NCDs, we have been talking about risk factors, we have been talking about interventions, but what I've actually come to notice is that majority of us are yet to understand what these NCDs mean. And the problem with a human being, if you give them something they don't understand consistently, they will not take it up. So, in this particular discussion, Grace and I are just going to basically simplify the knowledge that we have been sharing. And we are hoping that if you are in that space where you have a loved one or you're struggling with any of the NCDs that you're going to discuss, then you're going to really get some insights on how you can actually now overcome the challenges and even have a better understanding. Because the first point, or the first place where you need to start healing, is basically understand what might be ailing you or what you might be at risk of. So, Grace, kindly just take us through what NCDs mean. NCDs in the alphabet, like someone can come in and just say they chose to have the 3 or the 4 letters in the alphabet. What do they really mean?
Brilliant. And we will hear this a lot in the conversations going on so long as health is concerned. I mean, a practical example is this month. This month is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. And this, of course, we're talking about men and women because now men are heavily involved in it. So, NCDs is an acronym to denote non communicable diseases. Non communicable meaning that whoever you get to sit with in the house, so long as you have one of those diseases, you cannot transfer it to them, you cannot transmit to them. The communicable ones are the likes of tuberculosis, yeah, TB, if you like, from the conversation of TB in a TB, yeah. So non-communicable diseases are diseases that cannot be transmitted to the next person so long as you're in the same space and stuff. But in actual sense, they're non-communicable, yes, but they can be what's the word I'd use? They can get to the next generation from your genetic makeup. Now, so there are those two concepts. They cannot be transmitted directly. So, for example, if I cough, you not get the flu in form of diabetes, for example. But from your genetic makeup, it can get to the next particular, generation from your child, to their children. So that means your grandchild. And that is where, that's the reason why we are having this conversation, because it is happening at home. Okay. And home here means there's a father, there's a mother, and then there's a child, right? And this becomes very important because if we are looking at the next generations in multiple, having to battle something that can be prevented by their parents, hey, then we will have a very bad economy from a health perspective, a very bad economy from, household economy, trickling all the way to the national economy in the long run. So non-communicable diseases at this point are diseases that can actually be prevented from how we lead our lives from the household level. The decisions we make at home, the food choices we get to consume, there's a lot that goes into that. So I am hoping that from this particular conversation today, we'll be able to make healthier choices, informed. So the point one is information. So that information helps you to make a healthier choice from when you get to the market, and the food, the food things that you get to put in the basket, and getting to your house, preparing that meal for yourself and for your family in the long run. And we'll lead less NCDs or less non-communicable driven lives in the coming future. Lilian.
Okay, great. Thank you, Grace, for that elaborate understanding. I hope now we are on the know-how of what the three letters or the four letters, three capital and one small letter actually means. It's basically non-communicable diseases. And as Grace has said, they cannot be transmitted. And she also emphasized on the fact that they can have genetic transfer. And I also want to maybe add that they can also have a lot of impact in the immediate family and the general economy as well, because they can be costly to treat and manage. And that is why proactive measures like promotive and preventive are actually encouraged. So basically, let me just list a list of the major NCDs that we have. We have diabetes, we have hypertension, we have cancers. As Grace has said, it's cervical cancer awareness month. We also have hypertension, we have kidney diseases, liver diseases. We also have, what other, Grace, have I left? Um,
Cardiovascular diseases.
Yes, cardiovascular diseases and musculoskeletal diseases. All these cannot be transmitted, unlike the situation of maybe malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, where maybe contact or breathing or coughing or exchange of fluids can actually lead to transmission of these infections or these infections to others. So, Grace, now, most of us, as you have said, we perish because we lack the importance, we lack to understand the information to actually actualize it. You have given a very good example of when I go to the market, I need to be informed. I need to understand what is actually packed in my basket so that when I go home, I can actually be able to prepare healthier meals and more nutritious meals for my family. Now, what are some of the things that we can attribute to the rising incidences of NCDs? Because the fact is, in Kenya, the trajectory is on the upward
What? Yeah.
consistently, like it's not going down. So why is it so? Why are we having so many people struggling with NCDs in the country? And why is it that our public health interventions seems not to be able to curtail all these issues despite the noise and the information and the campaigns that we have staged?
Now that question comes down to the childhood, right? So the answer is, it is nutrition in a lifespan. What do I mean by that? From when a young one is very small, from we're talking about infants and children here, the 0 to 59 months, the 0 to 5 years, how are children getting to feed? Okay, so are we dashing to convenient foods? Right now, we're talking about, UNICEF had this conversation and put it out there. We have more children with obesity now than, undernourished. So we are battling two things. We are battling both, undernutrition and overnutrition. So those are two things that we have to think about. When a child is growing, is their weight consistent with their height? All right. Are they underweight? Are they overweight? Are they well nourished? And then we have now the conversation of overweight, overweight and pediatric obesity or child obesity. So that is where we start from. That is where all this is beginning from. Let me say this, Lilian, that we are seeing more individuals in their 20s and in their 30s with type 2 diabetes. Why? Because how they were brought up a little earlier, and here we're talking about, children born in the 90s, early and late 90s, and early 2000s now. And we are seeing that a lot because of the food choices that were made then. Okay. So there's a concept, there's a societal concept of eating bread being a very good thing. That was a mentality then. But then the choices that were made then also, the consequences are coming to be here now. So from a childhood perspective, again, I said in the lifespan. So we start with the child as 0 to 5 years, and then being a child, pre-teenager, then a teenager, and then now adulting. Adulting can do much. We go to convenient foods. There's the societal mentality, between in the 90s all the way to 2000s, where bread was seen as something that was really good and classy and stuff. So that was, that came also into the picture. So we started having more wheat consumption, and we're talking about, that is a simple starch. Overconsumption of it, of course, weight gain, and over time what that meant. We also have the conversation around not consuming our indigenous foods. Okay, so our indigenous foods were put aside. Right now, we can say that we've got a whole number of us who are getting back to utilization of indigenous foods, but that is a conversation that has begun the last 2 years, and it's having its good uptake. We actually saw the court say, allow for indigenous economy, farmer to farmer economy, which was really amazing to see. So there's that as well. There's also the concept of our lifestyles. All right. The concept of 9 to 5 means that one may be able to sit down for longer, and I mean sitting down for 6 hours thereabout. Um, the sitting down, that means the person has had their normal food without having to utilize it. So what the system does is that it will take your ugali, digest it, utilize the little that it needs because a majority of it is resting, and then convert it to fat. So that means that goes to storage. So there's that concept as well. There's the concept of whatever is available, or what I would easily call food deserts. Yeah. Restaurants that go for fast food, we are more oriented to get fast food. Right now, we no longer get out of the house to go and buy food. That food is brought to your house. There's delivery going on, and that comes to your house. Hey, so there are all these things that we have to think about. We have to think about how the foods over the years have influenced our hormonal balance, all right, leading to weight gain. We're also talking about how are we taking care of our gut health. Have we consumed all these foods that have promoted our systems to be in a fight or flight mode throughout, and rather than get to relax, have our nervous systems relaxed altogether. And there's so many. The thing is, they are also very accessible. A majority also of the foods that we get to go buying, and or having them come to our doorstep, they have what we call empty calories. So you're only getting calories but nothing more. That means you eat, your system will only utilize the little it needs or the much it needs, and then the rest of it is stored. So the storage is now what we get to see as weight gain. And in the long run, that is why we are talking about diabetes, we're talking about hypertension, what that means is persistent high blood pressure. We're also talking about heart conditions and heart diseases. We're talking about kidney diseases. And then there's also the concept of peer influence. I think I have seen this especially in the generation of, in our current generation, where it is okay to vape, and it's okay to, there's that peer influence. Let me put it that way. And in the long run, what that means is that the nervous system, inclusive of the spine, gets to start degenerating from the simple choices. They sound simple right now, but the consequences are really dire. The consequences get to affect the person before they are even in their prime years, in the long run. So the choices we are making here, the non-communicable diseases have been influenced a whole lot by the choices that we've been making, but they've also come from societal, they're coming from societal pressures. They're also coming from psychological response. You're talking about response to trauma, to stress, comfort eating. Hello, ladies. We're talking about the choices that were made by our parents, and then the children get to learn from the choices made from the parents, and that influences how that is done from the upbringing, in this case, nutrition upbringing. um, for undernourished children, when the system gets to understand, now I have enough food, obesity crops in. And then we're also talking about childhood obesity as well, right now, as a whole, in picture, Lilian.
Thank you, Grace, for that. Thank you, Grace, for that. And I think I like the fact that you have really emphasized and delved into, you have really emphasized and delved into how our changing trends, the way we have actually now, or the way, as you have said, like when I was growing up, it used to look like a punishment when we were being told to actually boil ndomas because we wanted to have mandazis, we wanted to have bread, or if possible, we wanted to have cereals. Then when we went to high school, the culture was really deeply integrated that cereals are those for the rich kids or for the cool kids, at least where I was called from, where we used to have the rich and the cooler kids coming in with a lot of cereals. So the culture has been deeply engraved in us. And now, you remember what I was just talking to you about before we started? That we have really embraced. We are really trying to force the Western culture on us by ignoring and actually living our indigenous foods and our indigenous way of living. And we have just seen, like there was a release that was done. I've just seen it in the morning. Charity shared it, and I've shared it with you. Where now they're really trying to go back to reducing intakes of maybe certain calorie density as and actually improving intake of nutrient density. Of course, I have seen a lot of comments on the why this is happening, and maybe our viewers can let us know what they think, because someone will say that food is not the only contributor to NCDs or disease, but we know that it plays a majority, or it plays a very big percentage of how your body's metabolism actually works. So maybe our viewers, you can tell us what you think that is actually contributing to the high prevalence or the high incidences or the high numbers of diseases that are not communicable, the NCDs in our country and globally. Do you think it's lack of information? Do you think it's lack of awareness? Do you think it's lack of practicality? Do you think it's technology? Do you think it's sedentary lifestyles? Personally, I believe that NCDs come about due to very intertwined factors that have been shown to, because there's no direct cause of these diseases. Sorry about that. My phone is ringing. Anyway, but what we can do, what Chris, you can actually help us highlight, is now the shift. Why we need to now start thinking in systems, we start thinking policy, we start thinking behavior change, and how we can actually now start trying to protect our masses from these conditions. I've seen one of the ways that adoption of that, uh, the new pyramid scheme, if our public health systems are adaptable, we should be thinking about that, because we have been resistant for the longest time. We still want to insist on the 50% carbohydrate, 20% fats and 30% protein. 2025, yeah. So we need to, what can we do to actually reduce the numbers before we start thinking about now diagnosis or early screening? Grace?
All right. So, like I earlier mentioned, the most important thing is the decision that you make at your place, at your house, what you decide to consume. And while we're talking about this, I like one that was done by Dr. Daniel Katambo. I think that is what I've been using the last 2 years, and we called it the inverted food pyramid. You can check it out. Basically, what the United States of America is trying to do, and having to deal to pick that out. Every human being is different. We are working in different places. One will go lifting weights in terms of Django, for example. In the construction industry, so they need more energy than someone who's going to be doing a 9 to 5. They're also going to be doing something different for someone who's working at the bank, for example. They get in at 8 and they leave at 6:30, thereabout, at least with the Kenyan banking system, when they're done doing their math. So there's intellectual energy on top of that. What do we need to change? We're talking about, let me tackle behavioral change, because that is what affects each and every one of us right now at the individual level. We need to start making better food choices, quite frankly. And on top of the food choices, we are looking at three things: the food choice, all right, the portion of the food choice, and the timing in terms of eating that particular food choice. So, three things have to align themselves. um I know we talk about a lot about type 2 diabetes remission, etc. But right now, for each and every one of us right now, if you're listening to me today, you need to tackle your food from those three perspectives. You're talking about the particular food choice you're making, the portion of it, so the amount you're going to consume, and then the timing of it. Okay. Now, from the rural, way of life, you go to the shamba, you get to do your thing, and it is very hot right now. The temperatures are pretty high until say around 6 p.m. So that means you need more fluid because of what we call insensible losses, well, such as sweating. It's not your usual, way of going to the washroom or the toilet and you pee. No, you are sweating already, so you need a little more fluid for it, and in this case, water. So let me even pause right there and say, even the choice of fluid here matters a lot. Why? Because we are so used to consuming, juices, sugary stuff. In the name of it is hot, so I need to drink something up. Water is your best choice. Absolutely any day, every day. So that is one. So number two is the amount of the food that you get to eat. So you've made the choice. I will, for example, this is simply an example. The choice here is I'll have eggs, I'll have greens, I'll have avocado, and I'll have ndoma. Ndoma is arrowroot, yeah. So those are good food choices that we are done. But what about the portion of the food choice you've made, of the good food choice you've made? So that has to be tackled as well. And then the last thing is the timing of that particular consumption. So that is as far as the food choice is concerned. What are other behavioral changes should we be making? We should be consuming less alcohol or no alcohol. And that means we have to be very intentional to be self aware. All right. We have a whole generation that is not self aware. So, coping mechanisms are those that bring harm in the long run. And now the long run is becoming shorter by the fact that non-communicable diseases are showing up in younger ages than what was depicted to be 40 years and above. So what are the things that should we be changing? We should be walking more, should get your sunlight, make the food choices from the 3 points I just said. Coping mechanisms, how we manage stress. We live in a world where we know very many people, but we barely connect with any of those people. All right. Long are the days that we'll sit down and talk. Ladies, we do this a whole lot. You are stressed, you get to talk about it. But then from the word go, a man was said, you should not cry, you should not talk about your issues. Long gone are those days. You need to talk. You need to find healthy coping mechanisms because, fun fact, when you are constantly stressed, it means that your system will respond by producing stress hormones. So you are constantly in a fight or flight mode, fight or flight mode. And honestly, that is dangerous for your immune system. Okay, so you want to ensure that you have a relaxed nervous system, you have a relaxed mind, and stress will never end. Quite honestly, stresses will be there in and out. We are in the back to school era right now. Each parent is thinking, do I have enough school fees? You new uniforms. You're talking about books. When they come home, what snack will they have? Those decisions have to be made. But it also means since we are in the early we in the early part of the year and also the first month, means that we have to sit down and plan vision boards. We're just no longer talking about resolutions. No, we have to talk about vision, goals, objectives. We make resolutions, they look like something, and then we never establish a system to follow through. So behavioral change, talk to someone, get a therapist if need be. um Talk to someone you're very close to, always open up, have solo dates, catch up with yourself. That is purpose of self-awareness entirely. You will constantly make proper choices for your own lifestyle when you are moving more, when you are getting sunlight, when you are making the food choices. So that is behavioral change. Now, as far as policy is concerned, we are looking at it from two governments. We've got county governments and then we've got national. Lilian, you are best to answer the national bit. That is where you sit. I sit, at the county level because of my workplace. So at the county level, we've got the power now. And this has been shown by examples of other county governments getting to do this. I'm really proud of ourselves. Excuse me. I'm really proud of ourselves, our colleagues in this case, who've been able to do this, that we can make policies and we can make law, we can make law embedded to protect the masses. It is so beautiful to see entirely. Very beautiful to see. So we've got that power, but then we have to be intentional to make the policies that will make our masses, our people, get very good information at good prices, because well, information is money. Hello. And then at the end of the day, the public health system will change. The system has to work for the masses, not the other way around. Yeah, the system needs to work for the masses. It was created to work for the masses, such that a person goes to say, to get a wellness check, they'll be able to do that, get the right information, go home and start implementing. That is where we are. So those are policies. As far as the law is concerned, we need political goodwill, big time, entirely. We need to be very conscious of the choices we make from a leadership perspective, affecting Kenyans for years and years and years. And an example is what we're talking about, the US Kenya health partnership or financing, if we may put it. And in the long run, what will be seen, like I said, choices have consequences. There are those who are going to benefit, there are those who are going to not benefit. And here we're looking at a good number of our masses, our people, getting to benefit. Lilian.
Thank you, Grace, for that. And I agree with you. I agree, Kabisa, that we have to make systems that work for the masses, because if we leave it at personal choices or personal decisions, it becomes a problem. Because you see, when you are aware that I'm supposed to go and get this kind of service from maybe my public health center or my dispensary or even my public health official or agricultural extension officer, and then you go there and it is not available, then there will be a problem of gaps of information. And then because I'm looking really for it, I might be forced to consume what is not right. So, of course, I agree with you, Grace, that we need to make sure that we put systems in place, both at the national and the county governments, because our people are really, really suffering. Now, this brings me to the impacts of the NCDs. Why are they so important currently? Because someone will ask, why are we talking about them? And before we get to the impacts, maybe I can add on there other factors that might be contributing to the NCDs, like maybe the environmental exposures. Like from that post that I shared on LinkedIn, I got a lot of insights, and I have been reading about the Meru, the central, the Mlima region, the Meru regions, and the northern eastern Kenyans being exposed to really toxic substances that were cases of dumping, where we had industrial waste from maybe the other developed nations being dumped straight to our soils, and this definitely has had a long-term impact on the quality and the types of foods that we're having. So we're having our people consuming more toxins in forms of food or from the foods that they are consuming, regardless of whether they are healthy or not. And I think this brings me to the other aspect that maybe we need better analysis of our foods in the country so that we can try as much as we can to establish toxicity levels in our foods as per the regions where they are grown and such, so that we can confidently say that the Meru region is struggling with maybe cancers, esophageal cancers, or the northeastern region, or even the Ukambani region is suffering from this and this because of certain specific exposures that might not be related to other factors. That is basically on the environmental factors. So maybe, Grace, you can, because you have highlighted the systems and on a personal level, because from a family's perspective, of course, NCDs affect us at both personal and national levels, where we're having a lot of expenditures, we're having a lot of economic disruptions. So how well can we try as much as we can to try and reduce the burden? Because remember when you started, you said that we now currently have obesity rates currently skyrocketing, even in our children and in our adults and women of reproductive age. There are reports to actually support that. So what is the cost? What is the cost of this to and a very young economy like our country? What is the cost of NCDs to our economy, to our individuals and such? As you have said, you have talked about some of the things that we are going to prevent it. Why do we need to prevent it? Kindly, Grace, I hope you've gotten it.
Yeah, I do. Let me just, go back a little and also mention that 2025 also saw a lot of things come to light. And here I'm mentioning two documentaries. I think there should be a follow-up documentary by Nation Media Group on the use of specific like pesticides, organophosphates, particularly in Meru County, that has had seen these regions. Each family has had someone suffer with cancer, and it was so tragic, quite frankly, to see that. Um, why we do not have these pesticides regulated, why we still have the black market working, there's so many gaps that get to affect not only the human health, but where we are getting the food from. So there's the food health, and then we're also talking about soil health and water health, all of the things that we get to consume. So if you're not consuming the food directly, you're consuming something that has come from that particular soil, or better still, you're consuming the water that has been contaminated by these pesticides. It is devastating. I'm looking forward to the second documentary if it's not yet out. So that I needed to mention. It was a huge highlight on the impact. Now, since we're talking about the impact, on the impact of these particular chemicals that have been chosen by farmers, from the little knowledge that has been disseminated to them. And in the long run, what happens is that over the decades, over the years, they've had to sell out part of their farms to take care of someone with cancer. And of course, you sell out something that doesn't come back again. and the person being taken care of sadly gets, to leave this earth. And that is one sad thing. So as far as impact is concerned, one impact that we don't talking about is lives lost. Okay, so non-communicable diseases and lives lost is a whole conversation. Quite frankly, right now we're talking about, some cancers getting to take more lives, more than diabetes and hypertension concern or combined. But now the problem is that if we put a lot of focus on one particular type, or one particular one particular non-communicable disease, and neglect these others will still catch up with the same data, and that is a whole wrong thing. As far as our economy is concerned, we get to find that we have a good age group of people who should be are working, but the productivity does not match up the numbers that are there in the market. And in this case, I mean the age group and the number of people in the market working, and the productivity, they do not add up. So our young economy gets to suffer by that fact on its own. What else does it mean? It means that from a household level, when one gets diagnosed with any non communicable disease, there's the cost of buying medication. Yet, right now, there is not so much a huge cost in terms of making a proper food choice. All right. So, what does that mean? Let me give a perfect example. If we are to talk about consuming the complex, what we call complex carbohydrates, we're talking about arrowroot, cassava, yams, tapioca, quinoa, and sweet potatoes. Yeah, in in portions that are equivalent to you. All right. So each individual, you can have the same household, but then one person will probably have a larger portion than the other person. Okay. Um, that means in the long run, you are preventing non-communicable diseases and the cost attached to it. Let me give a perfect example for someone who's battling diabetes alone, and most of the time they come with diabetes and hypertension. So let me just combine them for a minute. For metformin, that is 5 times 2, that's 10 shillings. One day, that is 10 shillings, times 30, that is 300. That is one drug. I'd say glibenclamide in that mix. That's another 280. So that is 580 already for one disease, times 12 for life. So that is the mathematics we are now making. And that is one disease. If you add persistent high blood pressure to that mix, and you're looking at buying, say, amlodipine 5 plus losartan H, so that is 15 shillings times 30. That is for 50 times 12 for life. And those are the simpler drugs. Those are the ones that they cost either 5 shillings or 10 shillings per tablet. So there's already consumption 580 plus 450, that is 1030 times 12. So 12 months in a year for life. And that is medicine alone. We've not talked about doctor's consultation. We've not talked about having to come and see me as well. And you have to do that in one day. Right now, doctor's consultation, take it around 2,000 per visit, minimum in this case, yeah? Plus whatever else you'll be required to do, from blood works to imaging altogether. Per year alone, that cost can come to 100,000 Kenya shillings and above. You can do the conversion to dollars, no problem, US dollars in this case. And instead, you can revert this same amount to healthier food choices. So that particular fund now funds healthier food choices altogether. So the cost here, it means for a very long time, and please note, I have made everything else status quo. There are no complications, there are no emergency visits, and those, we are human beings, those actually do occur. We are not adding any other thing in the middle here, this is only one person in one household, and everything else is status quo. Status quo also means that since you are, say, the father, you're not talking about your wife being unwell for some weird reason, your children, getting, we're back to school, so flu ups or diarrhea or anything like that, that is still going to the health fund. So in the long run, the cost is too dire for us not to make food choices, Lydia. It is too dire, both from an economic point, to a health point, and to also a household perspective. The consequences, the impact is too much. This is what I mean by the impact as well. Now that we're talking about health perspective, when we are not able to take care of ourselves very well, and like I said, self-awareness is something that we need to pick up very well. We are looking at a good number of professions as well being in denial. Okay, so for example, um, one gets diagnosed with hypertension, they are in denial, so they don't take medicine. And hypertension is very silent. You'll never get a headache, unless it's very severe, of course. You don't get to feel anything, unlike when you consume a food that is not very safe, and your tummy will respond. You'll either diarrhea, or you will vomit, you'll have nausea, all these things. Now, sadly, with persistent high blood pressure, silent, nothing, nada. And therefore it means that the damage that is also going on in the body is also very silent. What does that mean in the long run? It means that the complications that come with persistent high blood pressure will come in, sadly, since there was no control in the very first place, both from a dietary, so from your food choices, and you've been diagnosed with something and you've been in denial with it, not taking medication. The consequences here, we're talking about loss of eyesight from persistent high blood pressure, we're talking about kidney disease. And with kidney disease, it's just something else, quite frankly. So that means you'll have to either, now your cost goes up by the fact that you'll need to take your hypertension, and antihypertensives, or the drugs that help you manage your blood pressure, and then those that will protect the kidneys from further damage. And if worst comes to the worst, you need to get replacement therapy. Replacement, I mean that a machine will have to clean your blood for you, since your kidneys can no longer do that. You will need to get medications to replace the things that your kidneys have been doing for you. For example, you making your blood very nicely, your kidneys are involved. So that means you'll need to get a shot of the hormone that's responsible for that. Currently, 2,000 international units of erythropoietin is what? 3,500 per week. So per week, that means 7,000 in 2 weeks, 14,000 in a month, times 12 months for life. So the cost implications, like I said, Lilian, they are too dire for us not to make the proper food choices entirely. Lilian.
Kabisa, kabisa. I totally agree with you. The cost of NCDs is too much to be ignored. And maybe just to highlight the systemic errors where we have also seen, you said that the NTV exposure on Nyeri County. I also watched another one, and there's also another one about aflatoxins. Now, because now we can talk about individuals, we're going to talk about how to actually now prevent the costs, or to prevent the implication of NCDs from an individual perspective, because it's easier when you understand and the system support you. It's easier for you to actually now stage in intervention measures and actually prevent the occurrences of these preventable conditions. Now, systematically, you see, like, we have the hazard control, critical control and critical points, the HASP control points, where they're supposed to make sure that they are testing foods from production, as we have said, the soil health. They come in with storage, transportation, processing, and even packaging and distribution. Now, in Kenya, that's why I think I emphasize on the fact that we are failing our citizens, because there was also another one that was all about aflatoxins, and almost every homestead that was actually interviewed in that region, that was basically in Makueni County, they actually reported, Makueni and the vast Machakos County, they reported cases of liver diseases. That was basically, yes, if you check it from retrogressive, it was definitely associated with the aflatoxins exposure. And as we all know that maize is a common staple in the country. So when you're having a lot of negligence or a lot of gaps in the prevention from the safety aspect of our foods, then our masses might still get exposure even with the right interventions. So I think as we work towards moving or making sure that we are working on the individual aspect of care, because we need to make sure that we are eating right, as Grace has said, the cost is too much to be ignored, because we all know that in Kenya, the NCDs is, as in, like, it's the leading cause of poverty or poverty-linked stress in our families and such. So maybe we can also emphasize, or as healthcare professionals, we can start thinking about how to make sure that we're not just strengthening the systems for clinical practice and policy and advocacy, we're also making sure that we strengthen and we support the system for food safety. We have a Department of Food Safety in our national government. I'm sure majority of us are not even aware that it exists, because it is so silent, and we have seen a lot of cases where there's poisonous food in our market, there's poisonous maize in our exposure rice and such, and the dangers are too dire to be ignored, because once they come in the market and you go to the market, you have the information, you have come to Grace, you have come to me, we have talked to you about the importance of making sure that whatever you're selecting is actually safe for you and your family. Then you go to that market and you find that the maize or the rice or even the wimbi that is actually available out there is unsafe, then there's nothing much you can do. You end up consuming the toxins that again can expose you to such conditions. Because I remember in that expose, there was a family that had a 6-year-old. She had liver cancer, and they were saying that New Chawi, because where I come from, that is more common than actually blaming systems. It's easier for us to say that our neighbors or our friends walituonea macho mbaya than to actually now start thinking about holding systems and government accountable. So yeah, maybe that was just an additive to what you have talked about as the cost of NCDs that we cannot ignore, because they come with the mental aspect and the torture. You know, when you have a sick loved ones, there is no way. The cycle of poverty, malnutrition, and disease becomes unbreakable. Because how are you going to break that cycle when you're trying to get into something, investments, kidogo, and here your loved one is sick? You'll have to pull out your investments and chip in so that you can actually help facilitate their treatment to try and keep them alive as much as you can. So, of course, the poverty inclination, and you're also trying to develop as a country, we can no longer afford to actually ignore NCDs. So maybe, Grace, now we can talk about now from a personal perspective. You have talked about nutrition. Now, what other interventions for someone who's watching? Maybe you can share your comments, you can share your experiences in the chat, what you've actually experienced, what you have seen your loved one go through, the mental aspect, what you think is the leading contributor of NCDs. That is the main question that we want to answer, so that we can have a strategy to prioritize interventions. But from our perspective, of course, food puts in the biggest chunk. Because even if you see about the environmental exposure that we are talking about, you're talking about soil health being contaminated, affecting the foods that you're taking up, affecting our metabolic health, and then causing us disease. We're talking about aflatoxins. These are basically unsafe infectious agents that get into our maize, into our nuts. There's also a one for Western region, our nuts, and then when we eat them, we get aflatoxins because our systems are not actively enough or trying to protect us enough from this condition. But again, now systems aside, how can you work to ensure that at an individual level, we try as much as we can to reduce the occurrences or the risks of developing NCDs. Because as you have said, the complications are not cheap. Managing kidney disease is not cheap. Managing liver failure is not cheap. Getting treatment for cancers is not cheap. So what can we do? What can we do? What are some of the things that we can actually do to actually help us now reduce the occurrences of these diseases from our family, households level, even our community levels? Grace?
All right. So at an individual level, and this cuts across to ourselves, Lilian. It means that we have to move more. All right. Movement means walk more. It means that you have to get that sunlight. Okay. In the world we are living right now, anxiety, depression, and all these other mental health diseases get to catch up with us, quite frankly. And the side effect or the consequences have weight gain primarily attached to them. So get some sunlight. Vitamin D3 is crucial. Enough studies have been done to see that for the anxiety and depressed population, they're actually deficient of vitamin D. So move, get your sunlight. It will help you improve your oxytocin, which is a hormone very, very useful and very good to uplift your mood as well. So move more, get sunlight, and now start making good food choices. One thing I love about Kenya is that we have diverse cultures that have diverse indigenous foods. All right. So from the culture that you come from, we are all Kenyans, but from the culture you come from, find out what these indigenous foods are. All right. And revert back to those. Again, now after that, it means that you have to have a conversation with a dietitian or a nutritionist who will be able to sit with you and work with you, help you establish, now this is where you need to be at, this is what you're currently missing, and we need to work together to achieve this. Why? Because we are all different people with different bodies, meaning that we require different nutrients altogether. Like I said, you can be in the same household, eating the same food, but you have different portions altogether. Why? Because your body weight and the other person's body weight are very different. And again, our nutrient needs are also diverse. Again, the reason why I'm saying, after finding out what these indigenous foods are, from your culture, for example, it means that you can get to sit down with a registered dietitian, a licensed nutritionist, find out what your goals are. You want to keep a healthy lifestyle, you want to keep very good food choices. The portions then matter, and the timing also matters a whole lot. And then from your vision and your goals, you'll be able to start getting to make consistent. Discipline is not perfection, people. Discipline is actually consistency. Okay, the small habits you get to establish on a very daily basis, that is what I need you to delve in, and you'll be consistent day in, day out. Take it out from your calendar, from your vision board. Go on ahead and do that. Revert to healthy coping mechanisms. Okay, learn to take mental breaks, especially when you are under pressure. Learn to take mental breaks. It's 5 minutes, breathe in, breathe out. You'll be amazing. Why? That way your body is no longer in a fight or flight mode. You get to relax and you get to function better. You get to be more productive. When you get to plan out your food budget, for example, you go to the market, and when you get used to going to the market, let me tell you about something that I have learned over a while. When I get to do that, you get to learn who has very good produce, and not good because it's shiny, good because it is less chemicalized. There's You get to feel this from your own system responding. By the way, bad produce will always give you hyperacidity, kiungulia, if you like. There'll always be these things when you are getting used to go to your food market yourself. Focus on fresh for food produce, of course, and focus on your indigenous ones. What is common to us is the likes of cassava, yams, tapioca, etc. And there are those that are very indigenous to the different cultures. And even the food preparation is actually amazing. You'll find out you'll no longer use a lot of cooking oil and it is tastier. You will probably also find that you get to feel full for longer for you not needing to have to eat every other time. You'll realize that having to revert back to those, the sugar cravings go away. Thankfully, you get to revert to healthier coping mechanisms. You get to talk to people more. Okay, like I said, we are living in a world where we know very many people. We connect online, but do we really connect? Yeah, do we have meaningful relationships? And then one more thing that is very much necessary right now is that, can we be self-aware? Ladies, can we be self-aware? When we are stressed, we get to stress it. When we are sad, we get to comfort it. Can we be self-aware? Literally, if we're stressed, can we take a walk instead? All right, instead of sitting down and stress eating or binge eating. So, can we revert to those things? Can we go outside and do an activity all together? Right? So those are the things that we can do at an individual level, and we'll be able to do very well, because then we will promote the systems to work for us instead, Lilian.
Sorry. Thank you, Grace, and thank you for that. And yeah, I like the fact that you have really emphasized on self-awareness and the small, consistent changes, because majority of us want fast, rapid actions. So I know it's human nature, but we have to be patient with ourselves. And maybe you can write down what healthier goal that you can actually start with this year, and start saying that every day or every week, every day I will intentionally plan to sleep better so that I can have my body reset and manage my stress better. Every day I will plan to intentionally walk, even if it's for like 10 to 20 minutes. Plan for it. Small, consistent changes. You'll find out that by the time it's June, your body will be so used to walking at 20 minutes, you'll be comfortable with walking 40 or even 50 minutes, or even 1 hour at the gym. So it's usually, the goal is small, consistent changes so that again, you don't bombard your body with a lot of shocks when it comes to changes. So thank you so much for that, Chris. Thank you so much for that. And maybe before we sign out, because we have like 2 minutes, maybe you can give us, because you know you have experience with working with a lot of people struggling with, and one of these NCDs, that is basically kidney diseases. And I can tell you for a fact, I'm sure you were part of that lecture. We used to be told that one of the risk factors of getting these conditions was being above 50 or even being above 60. But now we are seeing babies as young as 6 years, as young as 10 years, as young as 15 years, or even 20, actually struggling with these conditions due to changing trends. So maybe a snapshot of what we need to change as a community, because change is hard and people like comfort. And as you said when we started, you said that these foods are highly accessible. They are everywhere. Like, even if I get my phone right now and open any social media, the next pop-up will come. Glovo watakuwa hapo wakiniambia order KFC and chips, and will deliver it in less than an hour. So they've become so rampant. There's a lot of advertisement on that. There's a lot I think we need to champion when it comes to NCDs. But again, we cannot have champions who do not understand. So maybe you can just give us a small rough up, of how we can handle the situation as a country, and of course with integration of nutrition, how we can integrate effective nutrition intervention at both the community and the primary healthcare, and even the curative or the facility levels to ensure that we are trying as much as we can to reduce the burden of disease, as you have actually very much highlighted it.
All right. So at least thankfully we've been able to deal with the individual level. At the community level, it is important for us to understand that societal pressures will always be there, but it becomes necessary for all of us to know that each family has their own culture. So there's a culture like where we come from, yes, but then there's a family culture, something that you get to establish for you and your children. That protect with all you got. Do not allow societal pressures to break that. At the community level, it is important that we get to hold these discussions. Anytime we've got, chief bazaar meetings, when we're talking about safety in other things, let's also talk about food safety, where in cases where we are getting milk added formally just for it to remain fresh, just as an example again, can we talk about those? Can we talk about where this is actually being done? Can it be closed down? This the same way we've always been done has always been done with illicit alcohol, yeah, because that has always been tackled from a community level. Can we also switch the same up to food? And this particularly is in even in agricultural regions, mostly. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about bad pesticides so that farmers are constantly aware not to purchase them from the different parts of black markets? Um, so that is community from a country perspective. So we're talking about policy perspective. Can we look at taxing ultra processed foods, for example? So the more the tax means the price is higher. Can we just not have them that readily available entirely? So that people now can switch to what they are growing entirely and what they are growing very well with good soil health. Can we have also the conversation about soil health as well? Because you hear this a whole lot. Sometime back, Bomet County had the same problem. They had been given a seed to grow, but their soil couldn't just grow it entirely. Can we have these conversations? Can we ask why? Can we ask what? Can we ask when? Can we ask how? Let's just not receive information and it just ends there. No, we need to ask questions. We need to be deliberate. We need to be intentional and get answers. If it is not something that's not working, can we just do away with it entirely? Because like I said, we are just not the ones who are receiving these particular hurts. The generations that are coming after us will also get the same issues, and probably worse, because we weren't bold enough to take the steps. We weren't deliberate enough to ask questions. We weren't intentional to call out things entirely. So that is what I'm looking at. That will be probably my parting shot too. At an individual level, yes, make those decisions. We've talked about that. Walk more, get your sunlight, make the food choices, eat the portions as you are working with a registered dietitian or nutritionist. Do your timings very well. Be intentional with your health coping mechanisms. Connect more literally with people. Make meaningful relationships. You're just not talking about networking. We're talking about making meaningful relationships. We're done with that community level. Can we start asking where our food is coming from? All right. So the same way we cooperate to get rid of illicit brew, can we do the same to get rid of bad food completely? Yeah. I'm giving an example of formalin in milk because that is something that I have come across, and at least it was called out. Yeah. At the national level, at the both governments, yeah, county and national level, can we respond when we are asked what, when, how, why? Can we be pro people, our people in this case, in terms of food policies from food safety to nutrition security? Because the moment you affect food safety, you definitely have affected nutrition security. Can we be intentional with that? Not just filling up pockets of very few people and leaving the rest of the millions of us suffering. And what happens? It strains the health system. It will strain myself and my other colleagues, Lilian inclusive, in terms of the number of patients we get to see, patients who would have been of very productive Kenyans, very productive Africans, very productive, our world here, making the economy work for us instead. Now we get to work for the economy. Can we be intentional? That is the simplest way I will put it. Can we just be intentional? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And we need to. I like your parting shot very much because we need to be intentional about protecting our masses and protecting ourselves, And we also need to be bold enough to demand for better systems. Because currently there is also unazima tunaweza kuzungushwa like the ones that when you tamper with something that is highly consumable or something that is very much consumed by majority of us, like right now it's really sunny, and then you go ahead and put formalin. I heard it's been put in watermelon, pineapples, and mangoes by the hawkers in the CBDs and the streets. So they go ahead, they put it there so it remains fresh for longer, and then you taking it, shida inaingia. So when they tamper with something that is very consumable, even if it's not, they're not supposed to expose us to such toxins. I like your parting shot, so I think I will support that, and I will also agree with that. And maybe what I can say is that NCDs in Kenya do not have to be a death sentence. They don't have to be a burden as they currently are. If we are to integrate the measures and the preventive and protective measures that can be integrated, because basically what I usually say is that watu wamekataa kusikiza, they know the solutions, they know the avenues to actually now deal with this problem. But as my friend and colleague usually says, a healthy man is not a profitable man. So, as a country, and that is why some sensitive sectors like health have to be taken up by the government. So we must call out on our national and our county governments to actually try and protect us through establishing systems, not just strengthening the systems that don't work. And as we have said, if it doesn't work, we can do away with it and look and adapt for things that will work for our society, our community, and our country. So yes, NCDs can be tackled, but it needs a lot of combined efforts, not just from nutritionists, of course, from the larger blanket or the larger tree that is basically healthcare professionals, policy leaders, political leaders, community health workers, community promoters, and even the community organizations, because it starts with understanding what is killing you or what is predisposing you to the risk, and then we can actually do away with it. So thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much, Grace, for honoring my invite. I appreciate it. It's been an hour of awesome discussion. Imagine 1 hour is done. I did not think it will go by that fast. And
I
I did
hear
not
you.
know my water, but I'm kind of thirsty. And you people, let's drink water. Let's drink water. It's really hot. It's really hot. Ukitoka nje dakika tu mbili hivi, mate inakauka. So thank you, Grace. Thank you, Grace. I think that will be my parting shot. And I think you're going to come back here again. I have written some few notes. You see, I was writing down. So I've written some things here. So we're definitely going to have room for more discussions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having you again and again and
Thank
again so that we can
you.
have the discussion. Thank you. And by the way, Grace, you can tell us, you can tell us what you do. Someone might be looking for a renal specialist and they don't know Grace or you.
Yes. I'm a renal nutrition specialist. I take care of individuals with kidney diseases. So you can always reach out to me when you need me. But that is not even the end of it. We can talk all the way before to prevent. The word here is to prevent. I get to work with clients who've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes just to ensure they get remitted altogether. They don't have to go, into the full blown way of life. And that has been going on successfully for the last 2 years. That I count as a success because they prevented kidney disease altogether, and they're leading healthy lifestyles, because we do not talk about just changes. We just don't change a diet plan for weight loss entirely. You lose weight and you keep it down, and you prevent all these other complications, and kidney disease is one of them. You can always reach out to me. My email address is the easiest way of coming to see me or getting to see me. We'll have online consultations. They're right there. We'll talk about the consultation fee from an individual perspective. My email address is my full name, Njuguna Grace Nyawera at gmail.com, and you'll be able to get to see me. Or you can reach out to me via WhatsApp, 07831 83 164.
Can you repeat your number? I want to type it. Repeat your number, 0783.
0783.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I have always to confirm this one before I say it. Yes. Was 0783 103 164.
3164.
That is for
Okay.
WhatsApp.
Okay, reach out. Go ways. Well, for nutrition and health consultation. Thank you so much, Grace.
You are
I have
very
really enjoyed the session, and I have written down things that we have to go and talk about. I
yeah.
think we need a strategy to come up with how we're going to protect our masses from the toxins, from production, storage, and such, because
Yeah.
clearly the existing food safety is not working. We have seen the sound of alarms, and nothing seems to be changing. So
Multiple.
we have to find a way of making it work. So asante
Absolutely.
sana Grace, wacha nitoke, niko na mkutano iko saa 7 and I
All
am
right.
host.
Have a brilliant day.
Thank you, and have a lovely day. We'll talk.
Absolutely.
Okay.